All right, so last week we talked about forever. We're not online yet, so I'm just sort of making sure everybody's settled down. We started this talk on forever, and it's about Easter and the story of Jesus giving his life for us. And, you know, if we have questions, it's totally cool because his disciples had questions. They didn't understand. They were scared. And a lot of times we're that way. So we're going to continue this series. It's a two-part series. We're going to continue that tonight and sort of go over the stories that we already talked about, but go into them with a little more detail. So we're going to start with our wonderful ladies here in worship. If everyone would stand up for me. All right, good evening, Renewal Youth, and everybody online. Thank you for joining us. We've got a special night tonight. We've got a lot to do, a lot to talk about, and it all revolves around Jesus. That's why we're here. So we're going to pray real quick, and then we're going to begin worship. Lord Jesus, thank you for bringing us here together through all the chaos and craziness of our week, school and extracurricular activities and everything we got to deal with, problems with friends, problems with family. But thank you for taking care of us and getting us here so we can listen to your word. In your name we pray. Amen. If they restack nicely, you don't have to, then it's the next person's turn. So if they restack the way they're supposed to, your turn is over, your team gets a point, your leader has to count that, so make sure your leader is paying attention. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Leaders, pay attention. All right, so we are going to start this game, whether you're ready or not. Timer's running. Go.
Here we go. Work it.
Alright, so keep stacking. You guys doing good? Alright, so next person hop in. If they fall down, gather them up, get it going. Alright, leave it for next. You can leave it for the next person. If it doesn't fall all the way down, leave it the way it is, let the next person go. Yep, no points until it goes all the way down. You're down 4 minutes left. You've already lost 1 minute. 4 minutes left. You gotta be steady, you gotta be quick. There you go. Gotta get those cards out. Oh, down goes Nick. There's another 30 seconds gone. Do we have any teams with points? Any teams with points yet? Any teams with points? It's killing y'all. All right, we're about 3 minutes. You may get rid of 1 cup from your stack. So just do 3 cups now. Just 3 cups. That's 3 cups now. We need to do 3 cups. I think we have teams with points now. We're in 2-minute time. 2-minute time. All right, you guys can do it. Oh, I just saw a nice drop over there. Oh, we got a point over there. That's awesome. Let's go. You got 2. 90 seconds, 1 minute, 30 seconds. All right, Jaden. Jaden got some points there. Keep going, keep going. Every time you do the stack. One blank every time you do the stack. Under a minute, time crunch. You're in a time crunch, 45 seconds. I see a lot of people sitting down. I'm talking about over there. All right, we're almost at 30 seconds, almost at 30 seconds. Twenty seconds. 15 seconds. Go quick, with those last points. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. All right. Leaders. All right, leaders. Everybody was pretty excited on that one. Oh, y'all got jazzed up there at the end. All right. Leaders, I'm going to call out your letter. I want you to tell me how many points you have. Group A. 5 points for Group A. All right. Group B. 5 points for Group B. All right. Group C. You don't know? How many times did it completely do a stack? Once, so 1%. That was Jaden, right? All right. Group D. What? You got 8? 4. Well, you're holding up 2 hands. I'm counting all the fingers. 4. All right. And did we have a Group E? What do we have? That's 4 for E. All right. Cool. So we have a tie for first place. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to do another round, but stay with your group and go grab a seat.
All right, so everybody should be with their group again. We're going to go ahead and get started. They told me last week I wasn't talking loud enough, so now I have to hold the mic. So, all right, so that was pretty exciting game. You guys did great. I know I would not have been able to do any of that with 5, 3, or even 2 cups, so kudos to you guys. I wanted to think about that game and compare it to another game. How many of you have ever played, show me by raising your hand, how many of you have ever played Monopoly? Okay, so you can put your hands down. So that game compared to Monopoly, that game, yes, thank you, is a lot faster than Monopoly. Monopoly seems like it takes forever, right? Have you guys ever finished a game of Monopoly? Yes? It took forever. It takes forever.
How many times have you guys flipped the Monopoly board because you were just getting frustrated? I see a hand already over there. Maybe 2 hands. I told you once.
Okay, so when we're thinking about forever, what else usually takes forever? So for me, and I'll give you an example. This may not seem like it takes forever for you, but I love cinnamon toast, right? I love cinnamon toast. It seems like it takes forever for the toaster to toast my bread so I can make the cinnamon toast. It takes forever, right? How about when you're popping popcorn, when you're starving to death and you're popping popcorn and you're watching the microwave and it's just not going quickly at all? Forever.
How about this one? You've been on a road trip all day, you're finally getting home, and someone's in the bathroom and you can't get in. Right? You stand around and you're like, man, you need to get out the bathroom.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say to that. So, does anybody have any other examples of something that feels like it takes forever for you? Test, school, chess. Yeah, which is probably why I'm not any good at it. I'm probably one of the ones that flips the board because I get frustrated with chess as well. But school, homework, all of the above.
Life
Yes.
takes forever.
When you're your age, it does seem like life takes forever. When you're my age, it goes by really fast. Okay.
All right, so what would you choose to do forever? So if you had to do it every single day for the rest of your life, we're talking 24/7, 365 days a year, plus an extra day in a leap year. All right, so we're gonna do a little poll. All right, so if I say something that you're like totally cool with, happening forever, 24/7, 365, I want you to stand up. If you're not cool with it happening, stay seated, cross your arms. All right, you got it? So you're gonna stand up if you like it, stay seated, cross your arms if you don't like it, all right?
Something you would do forever.
Something that would be, something that you would love to happen forever, all right? Sunny skies. Who would like sunny skies? All right? Not too many of you. I'm actually sort of surprised about that one. All right? Thunderstorms. We got actually more people for thunderstorms than sunny skies. All right? How about? All right. Take a seat. How about having spicy food? All right. How about having cereal for every meal? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Does not have to be just cereal in general. You don't have to have it with milk. You can if you want. All right. How about working out in the gym? Who wants to work out in the gym 24/7? We got several takers on that one. Nice. Taking slow walks on the trail, so like a nature trail walk. We could totally do that all the time. All right. Let's see. Riding a bike everywhere you go. Got a few takers on that one. How about having brand new shoes all the time? Oh man, look at that. That's pretty good. All right. How about having peanut butter? All right. All right, taking naps. Now, I think technically 24/7, 365, that would be called a coma. How about riding roller coasters? We would totally ride roller coasters all the time. All right. How about feeling hyped? You got someone that's really hyping you up. You get your hype man. All right. Here's the last one. Who would like to feel hopeful 24/7, 365. You guys don't want to be hopeful? No? Don't want to be hopeful? Yeah, well, then you need to stand up.
All right, thank you guys for participating in that poll. You can go ahead and have a seat. Now remember, when we're up here talking, remember what we talked about. Okay, so I appreciate that, thank you. So remember last week we had the balloons and we were trying to juggle everything. It was kind of chaotic and we couldn't handle it all. Exactly, but that's okay. Up here, having to do the cups, hurry, hurry, hurry is kind of chaotic. Kind of maybe your day today has been kind of chaotic. So similar to that chaotic feeling of juggling too much, our lives can feel that same chaotic way. Sometimes the chaos is fun. Sometimes it's fun, like when our chaos is like bouncing between friends, or activities, new experiences, roller coasters, all that kind of good stuff. But other times, the chaos can leave us feeling defeated and hopeless, like when our chaos is stumbling from one disappointment, loss, frustration to another. Sometimes life feels like we just can't catch our breath or we can't catch a break.
So what do we do in those difficult moments? Who can help us? And where is Jesus when we feel and are consumed by hopelessness? So maybe Easter seems like a strange time to be talking about chaos and hopelessness. After all, shouldn't we be celebrating that Jesus is alive? Of course we should. And we will. But if the good news of Easter can't help us in the middle of our darkest moments, then is it really good news? So we're going to do our first discussion. So since you're already in groups, that saves a lot of time. So our questions are going to be, when has your life been chaotic in a fun way? When has it been chaotic in a bad way? And then the follow-up is, what are some reasons why a person might feel hopeless? All right, so we're going to talk in groups on that. Questions are up there, and you've got a few minutes.
All right, we're going to have to kind of move on. We hope that everyone had at least a chance to share a little something. We're going to move on. So that last question that you guys were talking about, what are some reasons why a person may feel hopeless? Everyone experiences hopelessness, so I'm going to share just a little story of myself at a moment where I felt hopeless. So it was when I was in 10th grade, and yes, that was many years ago. So I already told you guys last week that my dad was in the Army, and so we moved around a lot, and it was hard to make friends. But when we moved to the small town in Louisiana, I finally got over that, and I was able to make some really good friends. Now, I can't tell you exactly what happened, what led up to this, but I can tell you that there was one day where I felt like every single one of my friends that I had made were mad at me. And nobody wanted to talk to me, and nobody wanted to be my friend. So I remember very distinctly that morning getting ready for school and purposefully taking my time so that I would miss the bus, not realizing that my mom was going to throw me in the car and drive me to school. So on the way to school, I'm begging and pleading, crying and screaming for my mom to please take me home. And I'm telling her that everybody hates me, nobody likes me, I don't want to be in school. So she finally gives in and brings me back home. And I remember later on in that day, sitting on my bed and just feeling like I had lost everything. Like there was nothing left. And thoughts are racing through my head, and thoughts that I shouldn't have as a 15-year-old. And then the house phone rang, because way back then we didn't have cell phones. It was just a house, and you didn't know who was calling. The phone rang, and my mom yells that it's for me. And so I pick up the phone. And it was my biology teacher, my favorite teacher, Mr. Martin. And he called to tell me that he missed seeing me at school today. So that right there kind of gave me hope when I was feeling at my worst. Thank you. When I thought that everything had been lost, out of the blue, I get that call. As an adult now, I can look back and see that he was put in my life for that exact moment. So I would know that there was hope, and he was put there by Jesus.
So last week we talked about some of the events around Jesus' death and resurrection, and how many of Jesus' followers were full of doubts, questions, and fears, and rightfully so. Their leader and savior had just been killed. Their lives probably felt chaotic and hopeless too. So we saw that Peter, who denied he even knew Jesus, needed courage and clarity to help him trust Jesus. Thomas, who demanded proof of Jesus' life, needed evidence and reassurance to help him believe. Mary Magdalene, who couldn't fathom that Jesus could possibly be alive, needed comfort and hope that the good news was true. So today, we're going to look at some of those same stories again to see how the very first Easter doesn't just address our doubts, but it also has the power to give us hope in some not so obvious ways.
So let's take a look at Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus' most devoted followers. Jesus had saved her from so much, and I don't know if any of you were here when we watched the series The Chosen, when we were at the upper room, and we saw Mary Magdalene and what she went through and how Jesus saved her. And he had given her a new purpose and a new direction in life. So when he died, Mary was devastated. Scripture talks about Mary's tears 4 times in just a few verses. So we have John 20, 1 through 13.
So early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Peter and the other disciples started out for the tomb.
You didn't memorize that?
I didn't memorize that. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. she saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him."
So Mary was experiencing deep hopelessness. She had already lost her friend once, and now his body was gone. So it felt like she was losing him once again. Sometimes when we find ourselves going through that kind of deep, aching kind of hopelessness, it's tough to see what's right in front of us. We can't see it. In our grief, we feel lost, confused, and uncertain. It was in these moments of uncertainty that Jesus began to speak to Mary.
So interesting thing on that 11 through 18 there, she had angels speak to her, but she still felt hopeless. Let that sink in. If you have a couple angels, literal angels, come talk to you, you gotta be pretty upset if you're still hopeless when they talk to you. So we're gonna talk on John 11 to 18. So again, we're gonna back up and go there. That's on 14. Can you go back one slide, please? All right. So we're gonna reiterate this one. So Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped. Struggled on that one the second time, and looked in. So it's a hole, and she's looking in. So stoop is dipping in to look inside. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was a gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go and find my brothers and go tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." And then she gave them his message.
So I don't know how many of you were able to watch the video we did on Instagram, but we talked about this. Hint, hint.
Wink, wink.
So who is someone that you would recognize anywhere? Anywhere. Can you picture them in your head? Can you have that picture of them in your mind? If they walked through the door right now, you'd be able to recognize them, right? Yeah, because you know them. So that's what I find so interesting about this verse. Mary assumed someone had stolen Jesus' body because she couldn't explain it any other way because he died and now he was gone. Overcome with grief, Mary wept. She cried. She felt that hopelessness. And as she cried, someone asked why she was crying. She thought the voice belonged to a gardener. But when the man said her name, she realized, wait, that was Jesus. He was alive. What I find interesting about this part is that it wasn't until he said her name that she knew who he was. I think that's significant. I always go back to my grandmother, and again, in small town Louisiana, I didn't get to really be with her until I was 12, and feeling kind of left out because all my other cousins got to grow up with her, and here I am coming in as a 12-year-old. But every time she said my name, it felt like home. And I would recognize that anywhere. I would recognize that feeling anywhere. And I think that's how Mary felt. When Jesus said her name, she knew it was him. It felt like home.
So Mary had been so wrapped up in her grief that she hadn't realized Jesus had been standing right beside her. Mary didn't recognize Jesus or the hope that he was about to give her. But Jesus did not give up on her. Jesus wasn't angry with Mary for not seeing what was right in front of her. He was gentle and kind. Jesus didn't pull away when Mary didn't recognize him. He stayed with her, called her by name, and waited for her to see him. Sometimes our hopelessness keeps us from recognizing that Jesus is present and with us. But when we're finally able to see that Jesus is with us, even in our darkest moments, our hopelessness can turn immediately into hope.
All right, that's some pretty heavy stuff. So we're going to do a little something different here. I'm going to ask you some have you ever, just some 3 have you ever questions, and just respond by raising your hand if you've done this. Have you ever been in really foggy weather or a blizzard? Yes. That's almost all of us. Go ahead and put your hands down. This is where it's difficult to even see what's in front of you, whether it be from the blizzard of the snow or just the fog that's so thick you can't see where you're going. Have you ever had swimmer's ear or an ear infection? That's a lot of people, yes. So that's kind of where it's difficult for you to hear anything. If you have the swimmer's ear and an ear infection, it just feels so bad you can't hardly hear anything. And you're overwhelmed because, oh my goodness, it's not comfortable, it hurts. And then the last thing, have you ever lost track of your friends or your family in a crowd? Like at Disneyland, Disney World, Universal?
I lost a 4-year-old. It took me half an hour to find him.
But you found him.
I found him. It was like half an hour later, we were at Aquatica, and they have the water bucket that dumps down. And the water bucket dumped down, and he got scared, and he ran. But when it dumped down, all the kids just sort of like went nuts, and I lost track of him. I couldn't find him. And what had happened is he ran, and he went and hid behind a garbage can. And he stayed there. And it was right on the edge of the footpath where everybody walks. But it took us half an hour to find him. And he was still right there.
Note to self, don't go to Aquatica with Mr. Ken, he'll lose you.
That's why I don't do small kid groups, because the parents would be mad.
All right, so sometimes that's what happens to us with Jesus. When we face really difficult things, we sometimes lose sight. Just like with the fog and the blizzard, sometimes we lose sight of that Jesus is right there with us. We lose that. Other times we can't really hear or understand what Jesus is saying to us because of the discomfort and the pain that we're experiencing. We can't break through that to be able to hear what Jesus is saying. And sometimes we're feeling hopeless, like I was at that moment when I was 15, and we forget to even look for Jesus because we're so preoccupied with that feeling of hopelessness.
Right? So like Mary Magdalene, Jesus calls us out of our hopeless state and into a life of hope with him. So here's the hard part though. Sometimes when we feel hopeless, Jesus doesn't show up. Let that one sink in. Sometimes when we feel hopeless, Jesus doesn't show up. Jesus went to see his disciples after his life was restored, but not everyone was there that day.
Who wasn't there? Do you remember from last week? Who was not there when Jesus showed up? Who? Thomas. Remember, Thomas wasn't there.
So not everyone saw him. Thomas wasn't there when Jesus returned. He didn't get to see Jesus, so he didn't even believe he was alive. So we can relate to that, right? We don't get to see Jesus. We didn't hang out with him. So it's really hard for us, for a lot of us. We need proof. We need something to grab onto. Just reading a story or being told by somebody isn't enough for some of us. I mean, most people tend to remain dead when they die, right? That's sort of the thing. Why would Thomas be looking for Jesus who had been buried? Why would Thomas believe he would ever see Jesus again? So we're going to read John 20, 24 to 29. So one of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it until I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound in his side." Now, we have a couple new faces. So the story goes, Jesus was crucified, was died, was buried. The events with Mary Magdalene happened where 3 days later, the stone was rolled away from in front of the tomb, and he was gone. So that's the first part that we're reading. But the second part is the disciples, his followers, were in a room. They were in a locked room. And all of a sudden, Jesus just showed up. He didn't open the door. He just showed up. He was right in the middle of it. Thomas wasn't there. So they're telling him, "We saw Jesus." He was like in this room. He's like, "Yeah, whatever. I won't believe it until I touch the nail holes in his hands, check out the spear hole in his side." All right? So that's a little catch-up for some of you that might have missed the story last week. So 8 days later, so they told him that Jesus came. Now 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time, Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. And then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into my wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus told him, "You have believed because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me."
So Thomas eventually did get to see Jesus, but it took 8 days for that to happen. So it didn't happen right away. So Thomas had to sit with his uncertainty, his confusion, his doubts, and everything that he was feeling for 8 days. Do you even remember what you did 8 days ago? Nope. Me either. That was a long time ago.
That was Tuesday last week.
Tuesday of last week.
Who remembers Tuesday of last week? What you were doing?
So a lot of time has passed between the time that the disciples saw them and to when Thomas got to see Jesus. Imagine how much longer it would feel if you were waiting and hoping and wondering if each day might be the day you get to see Jesus, because that's what Thomas was doing. So I'm sure his days felt even longer than our days did. And think about how disappointed you would feel those 7 days that you did not get to see Jesus. And all your friends are talking about how they got to see Jesus. So those 7 days leading up to that 8th day must have been just really long and really hard for Thomas.
Let me ask you, this one probably not too many of you have experienced, hopefully, but unfortunately you will. How many of you have had a loved one or someone that you know, a friend or whatnot, die? It's actually more than I thought. All right, let me ask you this. How many of you have dreamt about that person? All right, so for those of you that either have dreamt or have not dreamt about that person, if you had someone pass away, and whether it's someone in your family or a friend or whatever, they say, I dreamed about that person. You guys ever have that happen to you? You haven't dreamt about them yet. They haven't shown up in your dreams, but somebody else says, I dreamt about him, and we were doing this, or this was going on. Does that happen to anybody? Yeah? Okay, so a good handful, so. All right. But you haven't dreamt about him yet, but somebody else has. You get that empty feeling? You're like, man, I'm not good enough for them to come visit me in my dreams. What's going on? I think about them all the time. They were my friend or a family member or grandparent or parent, somebody important to you. And you get that empty feeling. Well, this is Thomas. Everyone else said we saw him. Not we dreamt about him, we saw him. He came and hung out with us. And Thomas was like, well, that's not cool. So he had to go 8 days. And they're saying that they saw him in person. Not that they all had a hallucination. They saw him in person. He came there to them. So he had to go 8 days going, well, am I not good enough? What about me? So we're going to jump into another discussion. So if you ever felt hopeless, if so, if you wouldn't mind sharing. Again, this is a small group. And when Mary and Thomas felt hopeless, how did Jesus respond to them? So based on the stories that we've read, how did Jesus respond to Mary and Thomas? So if you felt hopeless, it happens, everybody. Don't be embarrassed. But if you don't want to tell a story, it's okay too. But if you can share it, that'd be great. So other people will know that they're not alone. So this is your discussion questions. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on here.
We really do appreciate you guys sharing in this small group. I think it's just easier that way. I think perhaps you feel a little bit more comfortable doing it in a small group, so we really appreciate that. But we're going to kind of continue on. Jesus' appearances to Mary and to Thomas gives us a clue about the kind of hope that Jesus gives us. It's not a temporary, here one day and gone tomorrow kind of hope, but it's a kind of hope that can outlast our own doubts and our own uncertainties. It's a hope that is based on his ability to conquer death. Because if he can conquer death, there's absolutely nothing that Jesus can't do. It's a hope that's based in his great love for us. He loved us enough to actually die for us. And his love is enough to show up and comfort us when we need a glimpse of hope. So when we're feeling hopeless, can we expect Jesus to show up in the flesh like he did to Mary and Thomas? Probably not. Probably not. But here is what the Apostle Paul says.
So in Ephesians 1:18, I pray that your hearts will be flooded with light so that you can understand the confident hope he has given to those he called, his holy people, who are his rich and glorious inheritance.
We may not be able to see Jesus with our physical eyes, but the eyes of our heart can see the hope that Jesus offers us. The eyes of our heart. Like Mary and Thomas, our pain or our hopelessness don't have to prevent us from seeing what's true. That Jesus really is alive and that his love gives us hope.
All right, so we have some more discussion questions. We're going to spend a little bit more time because we actually have two sets of questions. So why do you think it's sometimes difficult to believe God is with us? That's a pretty big one there. Have you ever struggled to believe Jesus was with you? Do you still struggle to believe it? If a friend was feeling hopeless, what would you say in order to give them hope? And what are some of the ways the love of Jesus can give us hope? So that's a lot to get through. So we're going as quick as you can. We have another set of questions after this, and then we'll be wrapping up. So.
All right, guys, I know that's a lot to talk about, and you probably didn't get through all the questions, but that's okay. Unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, so we'll get going, moving on. So like Mary and Thomas, we're all prone to experiencing hopelessness. Sometimes our stories don't have to end in hopelessness, though. So what's going on in your life that makes you feel hopeless? So maybe it's your circumstances. Is your life really difficult right now? Maybe like the disciples, you feel like your whole world is crashing down around you. Maybe you're like when I was 15 and you just feel like everything is going wrong and nothing's going right. And you cannot see that hope in front of you. You can't see that Jesus is right there. So if that's you, remember what Mary discovered, that Jesus was with her before she even realized it. He was always there with her. He never left her. So even if you cannot see it, even if you don't realize that Jesus is with you, let the love of Jesus give you hope. Let you see the love of Jesus with the eyes of your heart.
So do you feel hopeless because of your doubts and questions? Make you want to give up on believing in Jesus at all? Or like Thomas, do you want to believe, but you need some help believing? If that's you, remember that Thomas discovered that even though he didn't find answers as quickly as he wanted to find them, Jesus did show up for Thomas and show him what he thought he needed to see. Like Paul wrote in the book of Ephesians, ask God to open the eyes of your heart and see what you find. Jesus loves you so much that he hasn't left you without evidence of himself. Let the love of Jesus give you hope. Are you feeling hopeless because of your own mistakes or bad decisions? Do you feel like you've dug yourself into a hole you can never get out of? Then the best and most hopeful news of all might be for you. Jesus loved you so much that he allowed himself to die and then conquered death for you. His death and resurrection made a way for you to find freedom from sin and death, both in eternity and right now. Let the love of Jesus give you hope.
But maybe you're at a point right now in your life where you're not feeling hopeless. Your life is pretty good right now, and that's awesome. But you might know somebody who is feeling hopeless. Whether it's because of their circumstances, their doubts, or choices, chances are good that you know someone who needs hope right now. when they can't quite see that Jesus is with them, how can you be a tangible expression of Jesus for them? So I'm just going to ask you a couple questions I just want you to think about. Don't talk in your groups about this, just kind of process this. Do you need to boldly ask God for help, either for you or for someone else? What would you ask for? How can you find hope in Jesus for yourself or for others? And what would that next step look like? Would you need to ask God for help staying hopeful? Do you have a doubt or question that you need to process? Do you need to confess something to God? Do you need to begin your journey with Jesus for the first time? Like truly begin that journey with Jesus? Do you need to pray or care for someone who needs hope? Do you need to offer up those prayers to God for that person who is feeling hopeless right now? Your leaders have Post-it notes. So I want you to process this and think about this. And you're going to write down your next step. Do you need to pray for someone? Do you need to ask for help for yourself? And we have our ribbons up here from last week. And under the ribbons, we have a whiteboard that we're going to put our Post-it notes on, giving it to Jesus of what we are needing our next step to be. So that no one can read your answers, what you're going to do on the side where the sticky part is, that's the side you're going to write your request on. So that when you stick it to the whiteboard, no one can see what you've written. Does everyone understand that? On the side where it's sticky, that's where you write your request, whether it be to ask for help staying hopeful, or you're on your faith journey, starting for real this time. On the side that has the sticky part, write that. And as the girls come up and get ready for the final worship song, jot that down. And as they're singing, we'll just quietly and slowly come up to the whiteboard and place our request on the whiteboard.
Do you have any questions on what you're doing or how to do it? Everybody understand? All right, so just during worship, when you're ready, doesn't have to be right away. Take your time. Think about what you've written, the questions that you have, and when you're ready, just stick your Post-it note to the board. Ms. Deb, can we put the questions up?
Jesus, thank you for bringing us here tonight and letting us know that when we're hopeless and feel alone, that we're alone with you and that you give us hope for those hopeless times, Lord. You're the light in our darkest hour, Jesus. Thank you for being the light in our lives, Jesus. I pray that if there's anyone here just that is struggling to have hope in you and who is doubting, Jesus, I pray over them right now. Stick with them, stay with all of us, Lord. Thank you for being with us and meeting us right now, Jesus. In your name, amen.